Now, Props and Locks on Fox 32 Chicago, presented by Bet Rivers Sportsbook.
Good morning and welcome to Props and Locks. I'm Caitlin Sharkey. Each week we sort through the best bets, odds, and props of the biggest games of the week, courtesy of Bet Rivers Sportsbook. Joining me every Sunday morning, VSiN expert Danny Burke. Danny, it's week 13, and the Bears are favored for only the second time this season. They welcome a struggling Lions team to town this afternoon. They are laying 3 at home, over under at 44.5. Mitchell Trubisky with 12 touchdown passes and only 1 pick in 4 starts against Detroit. I like the Bears to snap their losing streak here. Danny, your thoughts?
Caitlin, I'm with you on this one, but it's almost like they have to, right? I mean, there's no excuse to lose to this Lions team that just clean house themselves, and now you're at home, a 3-point favorite, and you have a quarterback in Mitch Trubisky who, let's be honest, relatively to what we're used to, he didn't look too bad last week, but that Green Bay defense isn't that solid, but you're getting an even more favorable matchup against this Lions defense that allows the second most points per game at 30 points per game. That ranks them 31st in the league. So if the Bears, with their inept offense, like we always like to say, can take advantage of some squad this year, it's certainly got to be against the Lions. So I lean with you in laying the 3 with Chicago, and I know some people like to look at the trends and the spots for a handicapping angle where, okay, this team just fired their coach, maybe look to back them because they're going to be rejuvenated and revived in some sort of sense. They want to prove that the team, it wasn't their fault, it was the coach's fault. We saw it with the Texans, we saw it with the Falcons. Here's why I don't buy it with Detroit. It's because both of those teams have really solid quarterbacks and good overall offenses and better defenses, maybe not as much the Texans, but more so than the Lions. So I don't think it's going to apply to Detroit necessarily today. And of course, the Bears have to win this game or they got to clean house, in my opinion. So I would look to lay the 3 with Chicago.
You hate to say must win, but this one is a must win for the Bears. Before we move on to our next game, let's look at a prop bet for this NFC North battle. Mitchell Trubisky rushing yards over under 15.5. Danny, we know Trubisky is a mobile guy. Do we like the over here?
You know, I do here, Caitlin, and the criticism with Trubisky sometimes has been he's been avoiding being mobile in some spots, but this year he's actually gone over this rushing prop in 3 out of the 4 starts that he's been in this season. The only time he didn't, this past Sunday against Green Bay, he had 3 attempts for 10 yards. Now, the first go-around against the Lions, he put up 26 yards on the ground, and we just talked about this Detroit defense. They're like Swiss cheese, so even if they do have some good coverage downfield, expect Trubisky to mobilize himself and improvise and find those gaps, and really all it takes is one big run, and that's where the Bears have had success on offense. So maybe they run some RPO as well. So I like Trubisky to go over 15.5 because when he uses his legs, that's when the Bears offense is better, and since we expect them to win, I think that's going to be a correlation. So give me Trubisky over 15.5 rushing yards.
All right, I'm with you. Moving on to the Eagles and Packers. Green Bay, the 8-point favorite at home. Eagles have lost 3 straight. Packers have won 3 of their last 4. Over under at 49.5. Danny, I like Green Bay at home. However, they are 3-2 against the spread at home this season. Your lean?
Yeah, Green Bay's had some interesting spots at home against some inferior teams. Most recent example against the Jags. But look, Philly's coming off a loss against the Seahawks. They ranked 30th in DVOA offense, a metric we always like to dive into. We know how bad Carson Wentz is. If you're the Eagles, why aren't you utilizing Jalen Hurts more? That's a conversation for another time. Nevertheless, Green Bay's defense hasn't been that solid like we were alluding to earlier, but the Eagles' offense has been much worse. Now, this game opened up with Green Bay as a 6.5-point favorite. That got bet up to as high as a 9-point favorite. But now that you see Green Bay laying 8, like we always like to talk about teasers, and this is a perfect spot, a home favorite of just over 7, tease them down 6 points. That gets you through the key number of 7 and 3, and then you just need the Packers to win by a field goal. If you're looking for another team to pair it with, look at the Ravens, another home team that's a favorite of just over 7. They're a 7.5-point favorite. Pair them with the Packers. You need both teams just to win by a field goal.
What do we think of that 49.5 number there with the over-under between these two teams?
It's tricky here because like we talked about with the Eagles offense, that's what would make me shy away from this. And Philadelphia's defense isn't terrible. It's not as good as it once was, but if I'm having to play anything with the total, I would lean a little bit toward the under. Perhaps Green Bay utilizes their run game a little bit more so and just takes time off that clock, and I'm not going to count on Carson Wentz to put up points. So if I'm taking anything, I lean a little bit toward the under.
All right, next up, the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Minnesota laying 10, over under at 51. Danny, I'm not sure I trust Minnesota, usually like you do, with a 10-point spread here, but I could see a high-scoring affair.
Caitlin, my relationship with the Minnesota Vikings is officially terminated. I am done touching them whatsoever. I cannot trust this team. They are so frustrating, and somehow they pull it out last week when they probably shouldn't have. But in this game, no chance I'm laying 10 with Minnesota. And look, the Jags are a bad team. We know they have the 32nd worst defense, so they're dead last in defense in the league. Minnesota's defense really hasn't been that solid, especially the last 2 games. You saw against inferior opponents, the Cowboys being one of them who have a bad offense. They were able to put up a good amount. Same with the Panthers. So I look at the total here at 51. Minnesota is going to be able to put up their share like they typically do. Now the Jags, can they do enough? I think they can, because Minnesota's been allowing these opponents to stick in the games and been playing down to their level. So look for this one if you want to make any bet, in my opinion, for it to go over the total of 51.
All right, I'm with you on the over, and I'm sorry to hear about your terminated relationship with the Vikings. Still more to come on Props and Locks, more of Burke's bets as we continue with a look around the league of Week 13 action. And a reminder, you can always place your bets at betrivers.com or using the BetRivers mobile app. We're back after this.
Sportsbook.
Welcome back to this Week 13 edition of Props and Locks. I'm Caitlin Sharkey, joined by VSiN expert Danny Burke. Danny, let's continue with a quick look at some other matchups this week. The Falcons, coming off their blowout win over the Raiders last week, are 3-point underdogs to the Saints, over-under at 46.5. Danny, I don't know what to think about Atlanta after last week. They do get Julio Jones back this week, so that makes me think it'll be close. Your thoughts?
Yeah, in my opinion, this is your classic stay-away game. A lot of question marks with both squads. Now, the Falcons are getting back some players, like you just mentioned. Julio Jones, Todd Gurley back in the mix. When you look at the Saints, Jenkins is going to be out in the secondary. So they still got Taysom Hill under helm, and he's been serviceable. But let's be honest, the Falcons are going to get their share of points with a little bit banged-up Saints defense. The Falcons have been looking a lot better. This game opened with the Saints being a 3.5-point favorite. It's gotten as low as New Orleans is a 2.5-point favorite. So it's been bouncing back and forth and back and forth. Now that it's at 3, I looked the way of New Orleans, but at the end of the day, I just don't trust Taysom Hill as much. If it was Jameis Winston, I think we'd be having a different conversation, and maybe they end up using him because Taysom Hill won't be able to provide enough offense. So right now, with it at 3, I would probably take it with Atlanta, but just one of those games I would recommend to stay away or choose to do in-game wagering.
All right, maybe Atlanta's on to something. Moving on to the NFC West, the division that continues to surprise me each and every week. Playoff implications on the line in this one. Rams favored by 2.5, over-under at 48. LA has won 6 straight against the Cardinals. It's the second-ranked offense against the second-ranked defense. Danny, how are you playing this matchup?
Yeah, and the Rams are also 5-0 against the spread their last 5 games in Arizona. And the Cardinals opened up as a 1-point favorite in this game. Then it flipped. The Rams were as high as a 3-point favorite. It's kind of leveled out at 2.5 in favor of Los Angeles. I want to go with the Rams so bad here, Caitlin, but the thing that's holding me back is Jared Goff. Now, you saw what happened with him against the 49ers last week. It, you could argue, was a trap game, and we know how good that 49ers defense is, but still, there's just some spots where he just makes really ridiculous mistakes, and you can't afford to do that in this division game. I know you've had success historically in this spot against the Cardinals, but I look toward the Rams here laying the 2.5, but because of the reason I just stated, I'm staying away from it. What I'm choosing to do is actually look at a prop, and you can get Kyler Murray with his pass completions 22.5, and I'm looking over and laying minus $1.30. So the number's at 22.5. Kyler Murray is averaging 24 pass completions per game. This is a spot with 22.5 being that he's gone over in 8 out of 11 games so far this season. And you talk about the Rams and how many times they've allowed opposing quarterbacks over that mark. Same thing, 8 out of 11 times. They're allowing opposing quarterbacks on average 23 pass completions. And since my philosophy is kind of that the Rams are probably going to win this game, I assume they'll be out ahead for most of it. Kyler Murray and company are going to look to pass the ball more so, which the correlation you would assume would be more pass completions. So I look for Murray over 22.5 pass completions. All
right, great prop opportunity there. The 7-4 Colts taking on the 4-7 Houston Texans. Colts only a 3-point favorite, over under at 50.5. Hard not to choose the Colts to cover, especially with DeForest Buckner back on that Colts defense, Danny.
Yeah, and the Colts have been a frustrating team this season to back, it seems like. But you look at the Texans, they haven't been any easier. Now, they've been playing better as of late, but remember, no Will Fuller in the mix, which is going to be a huge hurt to this Texans offense. And now that the numbers come down to 3, I understand why it did, but I would look toward laying the 3 with Indy. They have 2 more games, counting this one, against the Texans. So at worst, you assume they split. Let's be honest, though, the Colts have a way better defense. Rivers should be able to manipulate that Texan defense. So I like the Colts laying 3 in this spot.
All right, our final game of Week 13, Patriots and Chargers. New England finding their stride a bit, have won 3 of the last 4 after that 4-game losing streak. Chargers' win resume leaves something to be desired. However, they are the 1.5-point favorite here, over under at 47. Chargers haven't covered in 6 weeks. Danny, what do you think?
I'm going with the Chargers here, Caitlin. And earlier this week at Bet Rivers, the Chargers were actually +1, so I elected to tease them up. Now, obviously, that's not the case right now. They're laying 1.5. The line is shifted back in favor of the Chargers with news of Cam Newton being up in the air. But this Chargers offense is leaps and bounds better than the Patriots. The thing that is scary here is the head coaching matchup. There's been so much criticism of Anthony Lynn and his inability to coach the team and make the right decisions for a full game. So that's what's scary here. But the Patriots defense is bad. It's worse than the Chargers. And the offensive advantage goes with Justin Herbert and company. So I would lay the points, despite the recent struggles, with the Chargers.
And real quick before we go, Danny, let's get a recap of your best bets and props this week.
Yeah, so the 2 props I like, Mitchell Trubisky over 15.5 rushing yards. I think he's going to have to be mobile for that Bears offense to score enough points against this bad Detroit defense. And also Kyler Murray over 22.5 pass completions. 8 out of 11 times has he gotten it, and the Rams have allowed it. So those are the 2 props I like for NFL Week 13.
All right, thank you, Danny, and thank you for joining us on Props and Locks, brought to you by Bet Rivers Sportsbook. Join us every